Hello, and welcome to this week's Weekly Wind-Up, the programme that brings you news and reviews to you, the people of Kirklees. We aim to be interesting, amusing, informative, and of course a little bit provocative. My name is Kyle Warwick, and joining me on this week's programme are two Weekly Wind-Up residents. Firstly, we have David Ridgway, and also joining us is a new resident for the Weekly Wind-Up, Dave Hodgson. Welcome,
Nice
Dave.
to be with you, Carl.
Thank you. As per, we have three topics for us guests to discuss this week. Firstly, we'll look at ID cards, an idea that has been bandied around for a number of years, with very few among the populace actually taking it as a good idea. Yet in recent years, there seems to be a groundswell of opinion growing behind the idea of ID cards. We're going to look at what has brought about this change in opinion and what would the benefits be for the nation. Then we look at the way that media reports crime. Is this sensationalised? And if so, why is this the case? And finally, we look at the effect, if any, Baroness Vazi's resignation has had on government policy towards the conflict in Gaza. Now, straight into the ID cards. Many countries, including Argentina, Colombia, Italy and Germany, have adopted mandatory ID card schemes. Whilst these schemes vary from country to country, individuals are usually issued an identification number that can be used for various identification purposes. Some systems include biometric criteria that identify people based on physical characteristics. First question, and this is to both of you. I'll come to you first, David Ridgway.
Thank you.
Do you feel that ID cards are a good or bad idea?
Well, you can look at this two ways, Kyle. You can look at this from a purely logical point of view, and you can look at it from the point of view of government control. ID cards were first sort of came to prominence between the two wars, specifically in Germany, where they were used as a controlling matter on a population which they wanted to manipulate and change. But looking at the logical side, I just jotted down here a list of government-based matters where we have a number. We each and all have a separate number. Your birth certificate has a specific number which is specific to you. Your medical card has a specific number which is specific to you. Your Inland Revenue contact checks have a specific number which are specific to you. The same with national insurance, the same with your driving licence, the same with your passport, and I suspect there are other things as well. Now, I've just written down 6 without really thinking about it too much. That means there's 6 lots of people looking after 6 lots of different numbers, all looking after you. If there was an ID card, all of those could be filtered into the ID card system, and you'd have one ID card which would be yours. Now that would logically be an exceptionally sensible thing to do. But whereas some political parties seem to be quite happy with ID cards, my party is happy, and some people seem to be totally opposed. Our coalition partners are totally opposed. It comes back to how much control will the government utilise for this, particularly when you go on to the question of biometrics and so on and so forth. And therefore you've got to strike the balance.
Absolutely. How do you feel about that, Dave?
Very good point there about there are very good reasons why you should and very good reasons why you shouldn't have ID cards. Now, for instance, in the industry that we work in, Carl, which is media, television, radio, newspapers, it is very important that we are able to be seen as who we are. We need badges to say we are with KLTV, the BBC have badges, BBC reporters, things like that. It is important to have those. It's important not only from our point of view to be identified outside so that people can come to us if they want, or disappear when they see it as well. It is very important for that to be available. Where it is also important is, imagine in the BBC, or a hospital for that matter. You could walk into a hospital with a white coat or something like that, walk about all day pretending to be a doctor. Now that's fine if you don't, not fine, but if you don't interfere with anybody, you just want to think, I'll have a bit of kudos walking up and down a corridor and pretending that I'm a doctor. Oh yeah, you may laugh, but it's happened. It's happened at Heathrow. Somebody was twigged, and for about 10 years they'd had a pilot's uniform and been walking about pretending to be a pilot and very proud of the fact, and they did no harm. They were only found out when somebody was missing and they wanted somebody to fly a plane. What a way to be found out, and he had to admit, no, I'm sorry, I'm just a pretender. So yes, it's a good thing, but the person's right to be anonymous needs to be respected. I wish sometimes not to be noticed anywhere. I think generally people should be allowed to be anonymous if they wish, but the trouble with that, the first people who want to be anonymous are people who are going out to the Middle East and want to fight. Now, probably if we've got record of, we can find out and say, come back at your peril sort of thing, but it's easy to go out and come back and do things here if they want to. So therefore, I can shoot my own argument in the foot.
It seems there is an extremely sort of polarised arguments that, you know, you can argue for both sides. I mean, there are countries that have identification cards with biometric indicators such as DNA and eye colour and hair colour, skin colour, and there's a lot of arguments from certain groups within these countries that these biometric indicators can be used by government agencies, police, on racial grounds. So somebody can be stopped and on the basis of their religious background or their national background, they can be arrested or things like that. Is that something that worries you, David?
It's been going on for years, so why should it worry us now? We've had a vast amount of campaigning from the West Indian community in this country on the police stop and search laws, and they were quite right to campaign about that, because the imbalance of policing when that was prominent was enormously high, so much so that the recruitment into the police of the Indian subcontinent descendants in this country has been spectacularly poor. Does this argument demonstrate that the police is a racist organisation? I suspect probably not, but there will be people in it who will be, as there will be people within the West Indian community and indeed the Muslim community and every other community which will be pretty specific unto themselves as well. Dave also made the comment about the person's right to be anonymous. With the plethora of CCTV cameras, I stood on a street corner in London not so long ago, and I just turned round 360 degrees and there were 28 cameras looking at me. Whether they're all switched on or not, I've absolutely no idea. Massive business. Right to be anonymous? Don't think so.
Well, this is very true. There are some people that would argue biometric indicators on an ID card, such as DNA and things like that, mean that the possibility of, if somebody did steal your identity, then it would be virtually impossible for you to get another card, because all that information is specific to yourself. So, I mean, it's something like that. Does that worry you, Dave?
It worries me, and there are little anomalies. For instance, what do you do in terms of identical twins? Same ID. There was an amazing case in America where the identical twins, one committed a murder, and they couldn't do anything about it because they could not prove which one of the two had done one told the truth.
Them both then.
That comes under punishing the innocent with the guilty, and there's far too much of that.
We do a lot of that anyway, yes, quite so. Biometrics. When will you actually take the DNA from the individual person to put it into the card?
Well, I mean, at hospital then?
Yeah.
When though? When?
I don't know, but can I get some shares in a company that does cotton wool buds?
Well, absolutely right. But if it's going to be done at birth, what about the human right of the child, the baby, who might not want that to be done?
But I mean, if it's a standardised card for everybody, then they don't have the option on that, do they?
Why can't we be given the option to opt out?
Well, I think there's countries. The point is, there's countries around the world that you have no option to opt out. Well, as you can tell, this is a far-reaching topic. It's extremely pervasive, gets into lots of different niches of society, and unfortunately, that's all we have time for on this topic. Please do get in contact with any of your own opinions. You can do so by email, info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, or you can find us on Twitter by searching @TheWeeklyWindup. Join us after this break. And welcome back. We go straight onto the topic of media sensationalising crime. The reporting of crime has always been a mainstay of media coverage, yet many feel that in recent years, with the rise of internet news outlets, that many traditional news sources, such as newspapers and television news, have been sensationalising the way that crime is reported. Firstly, I'll come to you, Dave. Do you feel that this is the case? Do you feel that newspapers and television are sensationalising?
I'll tell you the honest truth. Apart from the local one, I do not get a newspaper, and I haven't since the 1970s. Why? I would like a newspaper. I don't want an opinion paper. And I have not found one of any political persuasion at all that does not ram its own editor or owner's opinion down your throat. I do not want that, thank you very much indeed. Therefore, I will not use newspaper. I feel, though, that both radio and television, in a way, because it's the pace setters, the newspapers, more sensation, get the readers. We want the viewers, we want the listeners. So I do think that both radio and TV is getting more tabloid rather than less tabloid, shall we say, and is going out for sensation. There's this thing about the BBC and the searching of Cliff Richard's Berkshire flat, for instance, and South Yorkshire Police actually almost taking them to court, the BBC, about it. I don't want to comment on them being taken to court, but it's indicative of the fact that one thing that the BBC did is make sure they'd got exclusive rights to it. There was nobody else there. So, yes, create sensation, but that's it, you see. It's people live on sensation these days. And that's the sensation of this week, gone. I mean, do we hear, is Ukraine the top of the list for news? No, it was at one time. For 2 or 3 weeks it was, all right, we've done that topic, now we get on to another one. So there's no in-depth, it's all shallowness, it's all, let's make a big bang today and we'll worry about tomorrow later. So from my point of view, it's going downhill. It's all news gatherage is going downhill.
Absolutely. Is that something you agree with, David?
I think that's been the case for many a long year. And I suppose it's a further sad comment that the British press is held up as an example to newspapers, editorial and selling facilities all around the world. The circulation of British newspapers is way bigger than any other newspaper banner anywhere in the world. It's quite extraordinary, really, and the content is pretty poor. But by the same token, the sales of newsprint is now becoming very much threatened by modern technology. First of all, radio and then television, and more latterly the other media things Internet, that you people use.
Internet.
Yes. Do you still have to wind it up to make it work?
It's got a hamster inside it.
Hamster. I think you're probably right.
And a mouse.
Anyway, but this business of sensationalising crime is not new. There was a thing called you'll probably remember this, Dave, the thing called the Penny Dreadful, which was massive sales in the Victorian era, which only used to tell stories about lurid crime. The Yorkshire Ripper, Jack the Ripper came very much to prominence through the Victorian Penny Dreadful. Reporting of crime is one of the specific mainstays of sale of newsprint. Is it going to change? Don't think so. Get on with it.
Well, do you feel then, Dave, that it's a situation where the readership fuels the content, or do you feel that if the content was changed, was more relevant, that people would still buy newspapers?
Well, I'm going to say something now that this is the first time I've ever said it. I've worked in the media for nearly all my life, and I have been a deputy news editor at a local radio station, which I will not name because of what I'm going to tell you. Now, in that town that I worked, a certain prominent gentleman, such as David, for instance, went on holiday and died in the most tragic of circumstances. And I was asked to send a young reporter out to knock on the house door and ask his 17-year-old daughter how she felt about her father dying. And I said, over my dead body. Is that going to happen? And it was over my dead body. They sacked me. No, seriously, I got the sack. Because, well, no, we don't want that sort of attitude, so thank you very much, on your bike. So, and that's what you're up against. So don't always blame the journalists.
No.
Some of them are decent, honest, have a moral sense of duty, but unfortunately it's all spoiled by other people who've got fingers in the pie of it.
Indeed.
And indeed, you're absolutely right, Dave. And you can name some of these honest journalists with massive integrity. Martin Bell with the white suit, Chapman Pincher, who's just died, who government ministers, they would run for cover as soon as the Chapman Pincher's on the phone. Tell him I'm not in. And it was quite extraordinary how much power that man had, and yet I don't think he ever overstepped the mark.
Nope.
Well, I suppose he did overstep the mark because he worked for the Daily Express, but there we go. I was going to make one other comment as well, and that is that the media is becoming increasingly accused of actually buying the responses it's looking for rather than actually getting responses. So it appears that the editorial requirement of a story is preset, and I think that is not good reporting. You don't seem to have cub reporters anymore who used to actually learn the job to go out and do it properly.
I'm afraid, again, this is all we have time for on this topic. If you'd like to have a say on it, please do get in contact. info@kirkleeslocaltv.com is his email, and you can find us on Twitter, search @The Weekly Windup. Now we go straight on to the news that Dewsbury-based former peer Baroness Vazi's resignation from her post as the Minister of State for Faith and Communities. Baroness Vazi resigned due to a lack of governmental response to Israeli activities in Gaza. Firstly, David, do you think the resignation was the best way for Baroness Vazi to effect change in government policy?
I think it was absolutely pathetic. Baroness Vazi has done absolutely nothing to help the people who are under such severe plight in Gaza. She's done absolutely nothing to assist the peace process between the Palestinians and the Israelis. She's done nothing to assist the general extraordinarily difficult situations which seem to get worse day by day throughout the whole of the Middle East. I think it's worthwhile commenting on the time when she stood aside. If she felt so much about the overreaction of Israel to the Hamas rockets, why did she not resign as soon as Israel stated their intent to take their tanks into Gaza, rather than the time when Israel said we're just about to withdraw our tanks from Gaza? I mean, there are good times and bad times for doing this. Has she actually condemned what the IS, I can't remember what they're called now, in Syria, this new Islamic
ISIS.
Well, yes,
no, that's northern Iraq, isn't it?
Northern
ISIS.
Iraq and Syria, yes. Yeah. Has she condemned them? No, she hasn't. One of the comments that I have heard, which surprisingly came from Diane Abbott, was, Why is this government not actually putting pressure on Saudi Arabia to use its influence in the Middle East, together with its millions and millions of pounds worth of ordnance that we sell to them on a regular day-to-day basis, to actually go in and police the region? And the answer came back, because they're Sunnis. And the guys who are actually doing all this mayhem, robbery and rape in Iraq and Syria at this time, oh gosh, they're Sunnis as well. So are they actually going to go in? And I don't think so. It's a whole bag of nails. And has Baroness Vazi made any difference? Absolutely not one jot. But by gum, it's a bit of me, isn't it?
Is that something you agree with?
I sum it up in a few words. Aims of Baroness Vazi, laudable. Way of achieving aims, laughable. Totally the wrong way. I am in no way involved in how she feels politically, but I do think in certain respects she is an honest politician. What she has done is think with her heart rather than her head. And I have to say, I think there is a certain amount of discord and disunity within her party as to exactly what Britain's policy in that region is at the moment. We seem to have a minister saying one thing and a prime minister absolutely contradicting him the next day. What is she to believe? Who will she believe? And I think, although she didn't make it clear, her problem is that there's discord in the Tory party, and instead of sorting it out, they're just trying to paper over it.
Absolutely.
But then that's just my opinion. I don't speak for anybody but myself.
Well, this is certainly an ongoing story that will undoubtedly develop in the coming weeks, months, and more likely years. Please do get in contact with us with your views and opinions on any of the stories that you've heard today. You can do so by email, info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, or on our Twitter page, search @TheWeeklyWindup. Thank you very much to both my guests today. It's been an extremely lively debate. I've enjoyed it. Please join us next week. I've been Kyle Warwick. Thank you very much, and goodbye.